Good evening. Welcome to episode 2 of The Cross and Pen. I'm Bill, and I'm going to talk to you this week about two things: deceptions and lies and deceptions. And what's the difference, and why is it important? Why does it matter? So, when we think of deception, we think of lying. And when we hear somebody talk about lying, we often think of deception. And for those of us who have studied the Bible, we think back to perhaps the Garden of Eden when Eve ate the forbidden fruit. And she said to the Lord, when she was asked what she had done, the serpent deceived me. Now, this is kind of interesting, and it may be a play on words, but there is a difference between deception and lying. You see, not all deception is lying, but all lying is deception. So we have to take a look at that and figure out what's the difference. And here's why it's important. It's important because if you look around the world today, there is so much going on, and the things that are happening in other countries are all part of a much larger deception. And there is about to be a deception perpetrated on the human race unlike any other deception in the history of the world. Now, I'm not talking about a conspiracy theory. Now, some might think it's that because they don't believe the Bible, and that's okay. But this is not a conspiracy theory. What I'm talking about is a deception. Not a lie, a deception. So let's talk about what the differences are between the two. So in Genesis, in the very beginning, in the Garden of Eden, God commanded Adam and Eve not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They were free to eat from any other tree except that one. Well, the serpent came along, tempted Eve. Eve succumbed, ate from the fruit, gave some to Adam. We know the story. That's where we are today. Now, the question is, did Satan lie? Think about that for a minute. Now, we want to say, well, of course he lied. Did he lie? Because you see, the answer to that question is in her response to God when God asked her, what did you do? What happened? Did you eat from the tree? And her response was, the serpent deceived me. Deceived me. He tricked me. Now, if there's any Seinfeld fans out there, I've got a quick little Seinfeld story about an episode when George Costanza's mother was talking to someone whose last name was Chang, and she thought this person was Asian because of the last name, and when she met her, she found out she wasn't, and she felt like she had been duped, as she called it. She'd been tricked. She had been deceived. So the thing about deception that's interesting is that deception always contains truth. It's a distortion of the truth, almost like a magic trick. It's a misrepresentation. Now, if you've ever seen a magic trick or an illusion, you look at it and you're fascinated and you ask yourself, well, how did that person do that? Because in your mind, logically, you know it's not possible for that to have happened. But it looks like it did. Well, it's a trick. Now, is it deception? Maybe, maybe not. Deception kind of reminds me of something I learned about many years ago when I took a real estate class. And in that real estate class, we learned something called the law of non-disclosure. This was many years ago, and I don't even know if this is still relevant, but at the time, what the law of non-disclosure was a law that stipulated that real estate agents were not liable or required to disclose information without being asked. So that if they were showing a home and somebody had perhaps committed a crime in the home, or there had been some incident in the home, the real estate agent was not bound to reveal that information unless asked. So down the road, the people who bought the house, the homeowners, they find out and they come back, hey, you didn't tell us. Well, you didn't ask. It's one of those kind of interesting play on words, and almost like a Abbott and Costello routine. Who's on first, or even something out of the Three Stooges. Well, you didn't ask me. That's why I didn't tell you. If you'd asked me, I would have told you. That's kind of what deception is. Deception is a distortion of the truth. It's making somebody think something about the truth that isn't accurate. So it may not be a lie per se. Now, certainly somebody can lie to deceive, but in the garden, there was a misrepresentation of the truth. And really what there was Satan getting Eve to question what God had said. Because Satan looked at Eve and said, is that really what God said? Did God say you really would die? I mean, now I think of the backstory to all of this. Because, we read the account in Genesis, and it just, boom, 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 several verses, we read everything. But let's kind of imagine how this is playing out over a period of days and maybe even longer as, Eve is in the garden and is working with Adam before all this happens. So as it's playing out, maybe there's the thought process of, well, we're the only two people on this planet. We're here to tend the garden, and Adam's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. And so maybe when Satan came to her, maybe part of his deception and misrepresentation of the truth was to get her to question the legitimacy behind what God had said. Is he really gonna die? Hey, we eat from this tree. The day you eat from this tree, surely you would die. I mean, that's how the verse goes. Surely you would die if you eat from this tree. And is that something that really stuck in her mind, and Satan went along with that and said, well, I can't question that. He didn't lie about that, and he never tried to get away from that. He made her think that it just wasn't true. He didn't tell her it wasn't true. He didn't lie. What he did is got inside her head and kind of made her think something about the truth that was inaccurate. Now, for all the scholars out there and all the people who are saying, hey, whoa, what are you doing? Hold on, not defending anybody here. The point I'm making is this. That was a deception. It was a misrepresentation of the truth. It was a distortion. It was not an intentional denial of the truth, which is really what a lie is. When somebody lies, they're denying the truth. Hey, did you eat last donut? No, wasn't me. Well, it was you. Well, you're lying. I mean, you're misrepresenting the truth. You're denying the truth. But a deception is something that involves maybe not disclosing all the information. Somebody coming in and saying, hey, I wonder who ate the last donut. And you kind of just don't say anything. Well, you didn't really lie. I mean, you could have told the truth, but you didn't. Then you could say, well, you didn't ask me if I ate it. You just said, I wonder who. So I didn't say anything. Yeah, it's a play on words. And I get that. But it's important to understand, because as we read through the Bible, we get into the New Testament, we get into the Gospels. Jesus said, many will come in my name, claiming to be me. They will do signs and they will do wonders. Make sure they don't deceive you. Deceive you. Not lie to you. Misrepresent the truth to you. In Revelation, it stipulates that Satan is the one who deceives the whole world. So what Satan's really doing is misrepresenting the truth, making people think something that's not accurate. And today in our society, there is so much of that going on. People are just lost in a world of deception because they don't see the truth. They don't know the truth, and the truth's right there in front of them. And why this is important is because we're getting close, very close, to what the Bible alludes to and doesn't actually call the rapture, unless you read the Latin, which is haptoro, but that does mean rapture in Latin. So we're getting close to a time when this planet is going to change significantly. And the devil knows this. He's no dummy. We don't really talk about him. We don't get into who our enemy is, but he is our enemy. He's our arch enemy. He's like Lex Luthor to Superman, if you will. And Jesus wants us to be aware of what's going on in the world. And he told the disciples that many will come and try to deceive you. Now, some of these people that are going to come and deceive the world, they're not coming and claiming to be Jesus. They're not coming and saying, hey, I represent God. They're going to try to deceive people in a different way. And what we're going to talk about in a future episode is we're going to talk about the rapture. We're going to talk about UFOs, and we're going to talk about you and why it's important that you understand what deception really is and how it's utilized to mislead people. And it's important because I believe, based on everything that's happening in the world, based on everything that I know and have studied about biblical prophecy, that we are in that time of the end. We are in the last days. We are in the final generation. And I truly believe if I live as long as my father, who was in his 80s when he died, he would have been 81, the year he died, if I live that long, I do not believe that I will ever see death, because I believe Christ will come back for the church before then. And so if you're someone who believes, great. We'll fly together. We'll be in heaven together when that happens. But if you're someone who doesn't believe, you need to understand the deception that is going to follow that cataclysmic event. And you need to know what deception really is and how it's a misrepresentation and distortion of the truth. How it's designed to make you think something that's inaccurate as the truth. And our world is full of that today. So remember, a deception is a misrepresentation or a distortion of the truth. It doesn't necessarily have to be a denial of the truth, whereas lying is the denial of the truth. Until next time, I bid you peace.